Ciao mondo, hello world, hola mundo, hello mon, and ni hao. We are in fact here in Shanghai, Professor Kellum and myself at the 2017 AKI and CRRT's Shanghai Forum and Dialysis Forum organized by the University Fudan in conjunction also with the Tongjin and the Jiaotong universities. And I have the pleasure to share a discussion with Professor Kellum about big data. So, John, what do you think will be the role of large data registries and big data in modern medicine?
Well, ni hao indeed. It's an important question, isn't it? Because big data is now all the rage. When you're at the grocery store, they seem to know what you're going to buy just from the last trip that you came in. And these predictive analytics have become a huge part of modern marketplace. And so the idea that these techniques could be applied to medicine is quite appealing and intriguing. It's interesting because, you know, for centuries, medicine was developed over observation by physicians and others over time. And what the hope of big data is to do is actually compress that time, acquire all that information, and in a very short period of time, as opposed to hundreds of years, develop an understanding about new diseases as they emerge, and diseases that you and I take care of in critical ill patients that didn't exist 20, 30 years ago because there wasn't the technology to keep patients alive. And so I do believe that big data and predictive analytics will have a huge impact on the practice of medicine, maybe for the next generation, and maybe a little bit even for you and I.
Okay, and do you have any specific question to me?
Well, tell me, Claudio, I think you and I care a lot about, and this conference is certainly devoted to acute kidney injury and CRRT and other management strategies. Do you think that this information technology is going to have an impact on solving some of the big problems that we have in this field? What do you think?
Well, first of all, going back to the issue of big data, I think it's interesting that we have a kind of an apparent paradox today. Because in one side, we are following large registries and collecting enormous amount of data from electronic medical records. On the other side, we are trying to follow the concept of precision medicine, which typically takes care of outliers and single individuals. But I think this is only an apparent paradox, because if we consider large big data like an horizontal standardization of information, precision medicine and specific analysis of single outliers in patients may be represented by a vertical information on the clinical history of a single patient. Now, how this will impact the outcome and the practice of renal replacement therapy and AKI management is extremely important. In particular, for example, we had the possibility to test the new software called ShareSource, which is a data collection system in the PrismaFlex machine that collects and sends data to a cloud, where you can actually, after download specific information on a large number of treatments, that allowed us to evaluate what was the difference between delivery and prescription, what was the average blood flow, what was the average dose delivery, what was the average duration of a specific dialyzer. But at the same time, this allowed us to evaluate the results in terms of what were the characteristics of specific outliers that had, for example, early clotting of the filter or machine dysfunction, vascular access dysfunction, and so on. So I think that with specific software and data collection system, we finally know how to manage the data, and we know what to do with the data that we collected. And probably our decisions will be driven based on a much larger base compared to the past. Do you think that actually this will somehow, in fact, change the practice of medicine, AKI management, and renal replacement therapy over time? How will the use of internet, how will the use of large database and data collection system on the cloud influence the practice?
You know, I think, Claudio, we're already seeing this happen. So when I think of the practice of medicine in Pittsburgh and Vicenza, it's already informed by many of the things we just talked about. So for example, in Pittsburgh, about 4 years ago, we instituted a system where the computer system itself looks for previous creatinines on patients, goes back in time for up to a year, and then analyzes those baseline creatinine values to try to figure out what's an appropriate reference creatinine to look at when a patient comes into the hospital. And so this takes a lot of time away from what a clinician would have to do to find that information, to go through multiple different databases and different records to find this. So this alert, this electronic alert that pops up when a creatinine value is increased relative to this baseline, gives a clinician a head start on making the diagnosis. And that's just one example of how the internet and predictive analytics can be used for this purpose. We're marrying that system in Pittsburgh with a pharmacy lab approach, where the pharmacist will actually look at the medications that patients are on and combine that with the risk profile that the patient has and make recommendations to the physician for changing dose and changing types of medicine. And I know you have, and you may want to speak about this, you have a system in place in Vicenza where you have a system that alerts physicians that there could be acute kidney injury, and they go to the bedside. Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, in fact, the system is called Nephrology Rapid Response Team, with the assumption that when a critically ill patient displays a critical value for a biomarker, all the stakeholders involved in AKI management should be informed rapidly, immediately, and possibly respond with a specific checklist of actions that represent a bundle for management or prevention of AKI. I think that this concept of the rapid response team has always been implemented for sepsis in the past, and now for AKI is a kind of innovative approach. Again, is a truly informatics, information technology based system that provides the base, possibly in the future also, for certain algorithms that can be handled by artificial intelligence to provide support for diagnosis and move forward in this area. So basically, I think that when we started our IRRIV meeting in Banff a few years ago, and we published the papers on the big data and application to acute kidney injury and CRRT, we have anticipated the development that would have occurred in the years later, and now we are really seeing this apply to current practice. In particular, we are testing now the new Prismax machine, which is implemented with the shared source data collection system. And I think that this is just the starting of a wonderful journey towards application of these new technologies for a better outcome and better care of our patients. So with this, I think we should say goodbye to our Chinese friends, to wish a wonderful day, and we thank you for having joined today's Cappuccino from Shanghai. Excellent, excellent.